All right, friends and fans, Greg here with Greg's Mobile Automotive AC. Not doing AC, doing some electrical work. Those of you who watched my last video, What's Up with Greg, I showed you this truck that I have here in the shop. It's a 68 Ford F100 and belonged to the customer's dad and wants me to do some wiring to it. I've kind of got into it a bit. And I know I told you guys I'd bring you along for some of it, so this is like video one of many. So what I've done so far is I've pulled the harness out from, I'll turn you guys around here so you can see, I've pulled the harness out from the chassis, all from the rear tail lights, all the way up and to the firewall. So that's the only thing that I've pulled out wiring wise. Then I got into the cab and I pulled out the dash. I'll show you guys that here in a minute. I'll flip the camera around so you guys can see what I'm looking at here. One of the things that the customer had wanted was he wanted the gauges and everything to work in the dash if it could, if that was a possibility. And I told him definitely, you know, we'll see what we can do to make that happen. So what I'm going to cover tonight on this little video, it's not going to be very long. It's just kind of I thought it was a really cool video to shoot. I talked to some of you today at work and kind of was explaining how I tested the gauges and stuff. And so I thought I would just show you guys the setup. I'll show you the dash that I pulled out, and then I'll show you, I got a little experimentation thing set up here on the workbench with another gauge. And I'll just kind of talk you guys through what I did. So, all right, give me a second here. I'm going to flip the camera around. All right. And then I'll turn you guys around so that you can see what I'm working on here. So give me a second here. Let me adjust the camera angles. Get you guys on focus here. All right. Okay, just about there. All right. So what we're looking at here, this is the dash. This is the dash out of the truck, the F100 68 model. I'm trying to get some light in there where you guys can see what it is I was looking at here. Give me a second to get all that set up here. All right, so, whoa, there we go. All right. You know, it's a basic cluster, right? Got your speedometer in the middle. Speedometer gauge, scale, odometer, fuel gauge, alternator put out, temperature, and oil pressure. So, whoa, hey, where are you going? So one of the things that, like I said, the customer wanted was for the gauges to work. Now, at some point in this vehicle's life, this cluster had stopped working, and he wasn't sure what the cause of it was or what have you. And so he put in, let me get you guys around here, the triple set of gauges, just an auxiliary set of gauges with temperature, oil, and battery. He put those in, got those wired up just so he could have some gauges. So I troubleshot this system, and I'm going to flip this panel around so you guys can see the backside of it. It needs to be cleaned up. That's my next step on this. So there's the backside of this cluster, and flasher module, constant voltage little module. One of the gauges here, one of the gauges there. I don't know what they are without looking at the front. I can't remember. This is, of course, the speedometer. You've got two lights here, a light here, two more lights here, and then two other gauges. Now, the one gauge that I do know for sure is different than the others. That's this one here with the yellow and red wires. That is your alternator gauge. Those two wires are straight from the voltage regulator and somewhere else. I'd have to look at the wiring diagram. Everything else shares this common wire here, black with a white stripe, and then the control wire is colored orange here, red with a white stripe, and white with a red stripe here. So what I did is I wanted to verify that this wiring and this connection and this ground was all good and that all the gauges worked. And the way I did that is I powered it up. I put a ground here. This is the grounding point right here. You guys can see that. That's the grounding point for the whole cluster. So I put a good ground here. I supplied power to the various light bulbs through the pins here after looking at the wiring diagram and identifying, which wasn't too hard because you could look and see on here, even though this one was a white with a blue stripe, this one was a blue, light blue with a red stripe, and green with a white stripe. This one was black with a, or I'm sorry, green with a black stripe. So found the appropriate pins here and put power to it, and each one of the bulbs lit up. So that was good. That told me that that wiring is good all the way up to that point, and also that the ground is good, because these old style bulbs like this, they grounded into the housing that they were mounted in. Excuse me, that's the reason why there's only one wire running into there for the circuit. I tested the blinker. I had to put a bulb on there and tested the blinker. And then I went through and I started testing the gauges. And the way I did that was I have this device here, this testing equipment. I'm going to set this back up. I don't like leaving it sitting on its face like that, so bear with me here. There we go. All right, turn this back around. And there we go. All right, so what I did to test these gauges, and I just wanted to see them sweep, right? There we go. Get you guys back up there where you can see. Let me see if I can add a little more light to that. Oh yeah, there we go. There's some light, a little bit of glare. So I wanted to see the gauges sweep, right? I wanted to see the fuel gauge sweep. I wanted to see the alternator output gauge sweep, temperature gauge, as well as the oil pressure gauge, right? And so what I did is I have a couple of ways of doing it. I'll show you the way that I've got set up right now, and then I'll show you the other way to do it as well. On these old gauges like this, you know, it supplies constant power, and then there's a variable, either a variable temperature sensor or a fuel sending unit, something along those lines, that will change resistance on the ground side. Some of them, the newer ones, it's a different ballgame, but on the older vehicles. And so what I did is I used two methods. One of them is this. I have this decade box right here, okay? Decade resistance box. And what this is this allows me to select different levels of resistance in ohms from, 0 to 10, 0 to 100, 0 to 1,000, and then 0 to 10,000, right? I can turn them all the way up, and it gives me a grand total of 11,110 ohms of resistance. And so what this does is it allows me to adjust the amount of resistance. And I've got this gauge set up here. This is an old temperature gauge I pulled out of another vehicle I'd done a cluster rebuild on. And so you see right here, the temperature gauge is showing that it's in, mid, like it's running temperature, not running hot, not running cold. And if you watch as I adjust these resistance, I'm going to add it in 10 ohm increments. And right now, with this sitting in middle, I am running at 55 ohms of resistance. So if you look right here, I have it on a 5, right? But that's times 10. So 5 times 10 is 50. And then over here, I have it on a 5 times 1. So 55 ohms of resistance will cause this to run mid-level. And so as you add resistance to it, I'll crank it up here a couple till I get the needle to move. You can see that the needle is starting to drop, right? And if I want to see it drop drastically, I would add 10 ohms of resistance instead of, right now I'm at 58 ohms of resistance. And so I'm going to go back down to 54. That way you guys can see it go back up. That's 55. That should be 54. Give it a moment, and that needle should start to rise back up again. Takes a little bit. These older gauges they weren't like the digitals where they responded quickly. So as you can see, I hope you guys are seeing that on the the camera here. That's starting to climb back up a little bit. I'll drop one more just to make it move a little bit more. So I did that just to verify. And so what I did is I set it up on ground, set the decade box up, to the ground on the cluster here. And then I identified each one of the hot wires, the signal wire, the constant wire, power wire that was going to each one of the clusters. So for instance, the temperature gauge right here, if you look at the back side of this, the temperature gauge is, should be black with a white stripe on one side and red with a white stripe here. So let me get that out of the way. So there's the red with a white stripe right there. And then there's the other wire that is the black with the white stripe going into the back of it. So I went into this pigtail right here, found the white with a red and supplied 12 volts of power to it, and then adjusted this until I saw the needle sweep. And so that showed me for sure that the gauge works, because sometimes what will happen is these little gauges will fail. Some of the old gauges had a adjustment in them where you could actually adjust zero. There was a little set screw in there. This one doesn't. I used to have one that did. Anyways, I just wanted to make sure that all of these gauges swept, and they all do. So every single one of them with the adjustments made, supplying power and then adjusting the resistance levels caused each one of these to sweep, which means that the wiring integrity is good back here. The plugs are good. I'm going to go through the harness very carefully when I go to clean this up, just to make sure there's absolutely no cracked insulation, nothing like that. If there is, I'm just going to replace. I'm not even going to mess with trying to splice or anything. I'll just replace the wire. But as I'm looking at it right now, and I was really, really surprised at how good a shape this harness was in for behind the dash. Anyways, it's just a real quick way to verify these older style gauges. Some of the newer digital gauges, you've got to go through different ways. So, okay, so that was the first way. I'm going to shut my, so I have this power supply here on the bench, and it's just plugs into 110. You dial up the DC voltage you want output, and then you can select forward or reverse, positive, negative bias, whichever you want to do there. And you supply 12 volts of DC power, or I can dial that all the way up to 50, but I don't want to burn nothing up. Don't want to let the smoke out. So bear with me a minute. I'm gonna set you guys off to the side here, and then I'm gonna set up for the other way to do this test, which is not any more complicated than what I've done here. In fact, some people prefer to do it this way because it's a little bit quicker, I think. Maybe, I don't know. I don't like it because the device I have is kind of a cheapie, and it's not impressive. It doesn't impress me all that much. So bear with me. I'm going to set the camera up, put you guys back where you can see what's going on, not the sky. And then I'll flip the camera around here so you guys can see my beautiful mug. All right, there you go. All right, give me a second, and let me set this other shot up for you. And what I'm using is a very cheaply made Rheostat. So all a Rheostat is a selectable resistor value, right? So this one on it, I have it marked at 50 watts and 150 ohms of resistance. And this is, I've seen some better ones made. This one was very inexpensive. I picked it up, I think at a flea market or something. I saw it and I bought it specifically for the purpose of what I'm going to use it for here. It's a ceramic base, right? With an adjustable knob. If you look at the back of this, try and get that where you guys can see it. I don't know if you can make out that copper or not, but there's copper wiring that's embedded all the way around. And so it's wound. And then it's connected to these 2 points right here with a center feed right here, okay? So what you do is you provide power here, and you can put your output here. And as you turn this sweep right here, the further away you are from the power supply to the output, the more resistance you have, because now it's feeding from here, center point, to this point on the contact. It's powering in, and then it's feeding through all of this wiring to the output. Okay. And as you adjust this, you're decreasing the amount of winding that it has to go through. And so you're in turn decreasing the amount of resistance. That's a really basic explanation of how these work. There are some guys out there that have done some good videos on a much more detailed, but that's the gist of it. And in all honesty, for the testing that I do, that's all I need to understand. I just need to understand that I put power here. I put what I want to put power to and how I want and what I want to control here. And then I close the circuit from power to ground, and then I make my adjustments, and I can see some things change. So I did that also on these gauges, and it's really good to test gauges with. You put a knob on here. I use this pair of tiny little vice grips, and I lock them on. That way I have a little bit of more control, and then I put my power here, which I'm going to go ahead and set that up for you guys. So give me just a second. So I clamp power in here. And then I put my, actually, you know what? I'm going to do it on the ground side, just like I had it set up on the decade box. So constant power into the gauge, like so. Path to ground here, like so. And then I need another little wire. Give me a second here and I'll get that set up. Where did I put my, okay, there we go. So make sure that's off. All right. Okay. So that wire to there. And that one to there. All right. Just about done here. Oh, I need one more clip. There's an extreme close-up for you. All right, so clamp that there, clamp that there into the gauge, and then I need one more from there to there. I think I have one in here somewhere. Where did I put that? Oh, there it is. There it is. All right. So yeah, talking to myself, talking to you, whatever makes you feel better. All right, so here we go. So I'll get you guys turned around so you can see watch me let the smoke out or whatever makes you happy. But getting all these connections and everything solid so they don't pop off while I'm talking. All right, cool. All right, so we'll get the decade box out of the way. I'll put it back over here on the shelf. And let's see if I can get you guys just to kind of flip over instead of turning it around again. All right, let's see here. Whoop, hey. Okay, get my big thumb out of the way. All right, so let's see if we can get you guys focused in here. Okay, that's not going to work that well. All right, we'll get you guys turned around. That'd be better. All right, bear with me. Cecil B. DeMille, I am not. All right. Okay, got you turned around so that you guys can see the gauge. And then I'm going to unscrew the base off of this real quick so I can hold it better. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that power supply on forward. Okay, and there's too much resistance right now, so it's not allowing. And you can see where the sweep is on here, right? So from there to there, I'm going to move that slowly. All right, there she goes. All right, so there's the gauge reacting, going through its sweep. And all I've done here is I've moved this closer to this point here. So now the path to ground is shortened because it comes in here, goes to there, and then is out. And then because that path is shortened, now this thing's wide open. So I'm going to give it some more resistance. And as I do, you should see that gauge start to fall. And there we go. This thing, like I said, because it's kind of cheaply made, it drags, and there are some out there that are more expensive and they move much smoother and they're little easier to control. Now, as you see, the gauge is slowly dropping, and it may drop all the way. I may have added too much resistance. And so you can see now the path to ground is, from the gauge all through this windings, and then through this, and then out back to the power supply. So I've added amount of resistance, and these windings, every one of these windings add a certain amount of resistance to it. I could set up a multimeter and measure that for you, but I'm not going to. I didn't set it up, so I might do that in another video if somebody's interested. So I've taken away a little bit of resistance, and now you can see the gauge is responding again. So there you go. That's the basics of how I swept the gauges just to make sure that the gauges were in working order. Because what'll happen sometimes is these little elements inside of here will fail. And a lot of these were not easily rebuildable. So I'm going to turn the power supply off here. This gauge should fall. There it goes. Excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and start disconnecting these so we can look at the back of this gauge, and you'll see what I'm talking about here, about not being easily rebuildable. Rebuildable. There you go. So as you can see, this thing is kind of pressed together. If a guy was studious enough, he could get that to focus. You see those little crimp marks right there where my fat finger is? So those crimp marks there, and there, and there, and I think there's one more. No, just 3 on this one. Nope, there's a 4th one. Okay, you could undo those and pop this face off and then carefully move it past the needle here, right? And then you could get in there and try to fix it, but the windings and stuff on that are so small that it's just not, it's easier just to replace the gauges. Now, there are a couple of companies out there that will sell you inserts. That's how come I've got this one. I rebuilt a cluster for a customer, and the other gauge that I replaced was a little bit different than this one, and it just didn't look right. So he had me replace both of them so they were, symmetrically, they looked better. There's a company out there that will sell you just the independent gauges, and they're really, really close to the original, what the original factory was for some vehicles. I've never looked at it for like this Ford truck here to see whether or not that's the case. But I'm really happy that I didn't have to do that route because, all the cluster, it's all going to be original. So let me turn you guys back around. I'll close this off here. Well, there we go. I'm trying to get it to turn around. I want to. There we go. All right. So, hey, wouldn't be a good video if there wasn't technical difficulties, right? I'm not saying this is a good video, but good for me. Anyways, I hope you guys got something out of that. My next video, I have the harness from Painless is the company we went with. I have the harness, and I want to get the rest of the old harness out, and then I need to lay both the new harness and the old harness out because there are a few of connector housings and stuff that if they're usable, I need to scavenge them off of the old harness. If they're not usable, then I'll just order new connector harness connectors and replace those. So anyways, once I get that done, like I said, I have the chassis harness out. It is actually in the bed of the truck right here. And believe it or not, there's not that much to it. It's a pretty simple wiring system going from the firewall to the taillights here. So I have that part out. I'm working on the dash harness right now. It's a bit of a mess in there just because I gotta take pictures and make sure that I'm getting stuff out that needs to come out, and stuff that doesn't need to go back in doesn't go back in. He wants the radio to work. He wants everything to work. And so one of the interesting things that I have to do that I'm going to enjoy, I know people think I'm weird for this, but one of the things that I have to do is I'm going to have to fish wiring up through the A pillar and across and down through the B pillar for the fuel tank The fuel sending unit for the fuel tank that's mounted behind the driver's seat here. Yeah, I know. Old trucks. Ooh, you were taking your life in your hands. And then also I have to fish up into here for this little dome light. But it's not gonna be real difficult because you use a fish tape, you pull the light fixture out, run the fish tape over, and then you can grab the wire and pull it through. You gotta be careful, take your time. So I gotta do that. And then let's see if I can get you guys turned around again, if this thing cooperates. And of course not, right? There we go. Okay, so I got you guys turned around. That's kind of a view of what's going on back behind the dash cluster. So I've got to go through and pull all this wiring out and, whatever's usable and what have you, which a lot of this is coming on the new harness. So, the most that I might have to do is maybe this connector right here. I may have to depin the connector here from the old harness and connect it into the new harness with, the proper insert pins and all that stuff, which not that big of a deal. And then I have to, that's one of the things I'm taking my time on is there's a fuse block down there, which I'm not going to get you guys down there to be able to see that tonight, but there's a little fuse block down there that needs to come out. It's updated. This, truck originally had the glass fuses in it. And now the new harness will have the updated blade fuses, that everyone runs in their cars nowadays. So all of that there's going on. Let's see, what else can I show you guys while I got you here. I'm going to have to do some rubber grommets for where it passes through the firewall there. And I have some replacement ones so that I'll put new rubber grommets in there. So anyways, that's what I'm working on next. And then the last portion of this, I'll get you guys around here, will be into the engine compartment and starting to replace the harness in there. It comes through the firewall there. It also comes through the firewall over here. And so I'll have to work all that wiring out, disconnect things from, disconnect wire from the coil and, all that stuff. I have new grounds. So I have braided wire grounds that I'm going to install from the engine to the frame and from the engine to the body. I think I have a body ground, and then there's one other one that I have. Anyways, so I'll get all that done. So once I get all the wiring out, then I'll start making the new connections and routing the new wiring harness and getting it ready so that I can make whatever, terminal connections and stuff like that I need to make. So that's where we're at there. And then I'm still waiting. I ordered a voltage regulator. For those of you guys that had seen this, let me turn you around if it cooperates. I don't know why there. All right, there we go. For those of you guys that watched the first video, if you remember, I said when the truck came in, the lights were really dim, this, that, and the other. Did some troubleshooting. Like I said, it was kind of cool because it made me, use my head and go back to some old school troubleshooting thoughts. Voltage regulator is what's gone wrong with the alternator. That's why the alternator wasn't charging. The battery was going dead. I charged the battery overnight. Battery works like a champ. I put what I call the judge on it, my big old load tester. That thing will, if you think you got a good battery, let me throw this on there. We'll tell you for sure. So anyways, I did some testing, verified that it does need a voltage regulator on this vehicle. It's an external one, and I'm still waiting. There's a lot of stuff that's been delayed because of all the storms and stuff that are going on, I think down in Texas and down that way. There's a lot of stuff that's been delayed. So once I get the voltage regulator in, the alternator will charge and that won't be an issue anymore. And then, yeah, I'm excited. Hope you guys are too. Hope this is good video content for you guys. I know I don't ask this, but I'm going to start asking you guys. If you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up. Let me have some comments. If you want to see something in particular, give me a comment and I'll try to appease you guys there. Share this if you think it's valuable or if it's entertaining. And those of you that have subscribed, I appreciate it. I know most of you, and right on, man. Thank you guys. Appreciate you guys supporting me. Means a lot. Those of you who know me personally, I really do appreciate it. All right, so this is way longer than I anticipated. So again, if it's good, give me a thumbs up. Let me know. If it's bad and you give me a thumbs down, at least tell me why so that maybe I can try and get better. If you just want to tell me I suck, well, Okay, whatever. All right. Thanks a lot. And as always, take care. Bye.